Well, we got to talk about the Hall of Fame, don't we?
The Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame, to be specific.
Well, I was going to mention that, but it's the Hall of Fame, just in short version, just for everybody now, because it's the season for that. It always comes out right before Thanksgiving, so the people can argue about it over their family dinners. And is it getting a little bit complicated now? Is whatever fascination that Dave and Tony Khan share with numbers and percentages and ratings points and all this mathematical mumbo jumbo, has he got over most people's heads at this point?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I still get a ballot. I haven't voted in several years. I stopped voting. I stopped doing a show about, various voters talking about who they were voting for, because I really got fed up with, I realized this Hall of Fame is nonsense because of the voting body. And, I've seen various random people, even on Dave's message board, just say, oh yeah, I vote, here's where I vote. Who the fuck is this? They're not a reporter, they're not a historian, they're not a wrestler, active or retired.
Yeah, that's supposed to be the four categories of people that vote for this are current wrestlers, retired wrestlers, historians, and reporters.
Right. And typically the reporters are the ones who vote, stupidly at times. And I'd like to know who would. I think there needs to be some sort of disclosure of how many people are voting.
Are Dave Meltzer's, proteges that he has taught how to be reporters.
Well, we don't know that. We actually don't know anything. And I think there should be some sort of disclosure about who is voting, how many people are voting, and who is voting. But I stopped voting because I thought it was ridiculous. And it started just becoming a frustrating thing to look at people who they're no-brainers, but especially based on people that are already in. Again, Morris Siegel. That was Morris Siegel, Roy Welch, and Wild Bull Curry are on the ballot because of me. Because I made that an issue. And none of them are still in the Hall of Fame. But Paul Bosch is, and Paul Bosch should be. But he can't be if Morris Siegel isn't. But Morris Siegel wasn't friends with Dave, so Morris Siegel wasn't in the first class of the Hall of Fame like Paul Bosch was.
Well, and here's part of the thing is that now, for a number of years, you would see, okay, this is the new class for the Hall of Fame. Okay, these are Hall of Fame wrestlers in pretty much anybody's book, names that supposedly the parameters are longevity, working ability, drawing power, historical significance, that kind of thing. And you most of the time would say, okay, these particular people probably are Hall of Fame wrestlers. But then over the last, 10 or 15 years now, he decided, well, enough people aren't getting in from Japan or Mexico or in other places around the world because most of his readers were English-speaking readers who live in the United States, Canada, whatever. So he broke it down into U.S. and Canada modern, U.S. and Canada historical, Japan, Mexico, and the rest of the world. But he has somehow also figured out that to get inducted in the Hall of Fame, in the U.S. and Canada modern category, you need 274 votes. But in the U.S. and Canada historical category, you need 243 votes. In Japan, you need 169. Mexico, I guess the peso has been devalued. You only need 113.
But you can vote for all of them.
And the rest of the world, you need 127.
But you can vote for all of them.
But anybody from any part of the country can vote for it. That's what the fuck? Now it sounds like a goddamn AEW wrestling angle.
It's like Dave's star system. Dave can't really explain or justify the way that it's been done. And again, he can't justify or explain who he's given some of these ballots to. Jim, before we go over who got in, if you don't mind, I find this fascinating.
Okay.
Can I go over with you the list of the people who got below 60%, that's the threshold to get in, and above 45%, so right below getting in, You know, if things had gone a few more votes from someone who declared themselves an expert in a certain region, and who knows what happens. Not getting in, 159 votes, Bobby Bruns. So that's 56.4%. A historical figure of incredible significance, especially when it comes to Japanese wrestling history, and Ricky Dozan. And of course,
Bobby Bruns, for people who may just have wandered in out of the rain, was not only a wrestler, but a successful booker and promoter from the Central States area who arranged the first major tours of Japan and found Ricky Dozan and basically was instrumental in starting pro wrestling in Japan. And he did a bunch of things over here in this country also.
Yeah, in St. Louis.
And he didn't get in. He was right under the cutoff with 159 votes. But then the guy underneath him, who didn't get in, got 218 votes. But Bobby Bruns had a 56.4% showing, and the 218 votes only had 53.8%. That's what the fuck is going on here?
And by the way, the person you're talking about who didn't get in with all those votes, that's the Junkyard Dog. And that's always been an annual issue. Why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? He's up. He got 40% last year. 53.8%, I guess, of the people voting for U.S. and Canada historical. Or is it modern? Is that modern or historical?
You would think he'd be modern.
Okay.
But nevertheless.
Well, under Junkyard Dog, Hayabusa with 150 votes, obviously the Japanese category, 53.2%. Dory Dixon with 99 votes, because that would be for Mexico. Not for anything he did here. That would be only for Mexico, 53.2% with 99 votes.
And I saw Dory Dixon. When I was a kid on television, I didn't see him live, but he and Bobo Brazil were partners in a team for a while, blah, blah, blah.
He's one of the oldest living wrestlers right now.
Yes, but I'm sorry. That's what I'm saying. We can't possibly even read this entire list of people who didn't make it in because it looks like, 100 fucking people.
It looks like a Hall of Fame. That's what it looks like.
Actually, no, it doesn't all, because some of the names, yes, but some, come on.
Right.
But, but he's got to put them up there. But it's this giant list. And you want to talk about who didn't get in, the just unders, but I think you got to compare it with who did get in first to see what the fuck, this doesn't make any sense. Because go ahead.
No, I'll let you go ahead.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that we are talking that Junkyard Dog didn't get in, that CM Punk was not voted in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Okay, he's still active. Maybe they take that tactic. Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith.
As a team.
The British Bulldogs as a team.
Because Dynamite is already in. He was in the first class. David anointed him a member.
But then we've established that you can be singles and tags from the other Hall of Fames, whatever. Kevin and Kerry and David Von Erich. They didn't get in, but SEMA got in.
Now, a lot of the fans may not be too familiar with SEMA.
You think?
Can you... You want to explain to all the listeners who Hall of Fame wrestler SEMA is?
CIMA. I will have to go to the description because I don't fucking know. Hold on. Where is he described?
He's described somewhere in there.
Somewhere in here.
But he got 170 votes for Japan, which is 60.3%, up from 23% last year. So a major boost.
Oh, okay. He was a member of Ultimo Dragon's first training class in 1997 and quickly became the top star of the Toraman promotion. And then he appeared several times early in his career in WCW. And he feuded with Magnum Tokyo. And then Toryumon became Dragon Gate. He once had a 574-day run as Open the Dream Gate champion. But he was never considered a major promotion nor drew the crowds that got people like Maeda, Takada, and Onita in.
Sounds like a Hall of Famer.
He was the guy that did the OWE in China. And when AEW started out, remember they had the little tiny.
Oh, they announced a big partnership with them.
Yes. But then their promotion OWE fell apart. But they went to GLEAT. GLEAT, GLEAT, another smaller promotion, apparently run by sheep. GLEAT? So this is a guy that's in the fucking Hall of Fame. But Junkyard Dog is not, nor is CM Punk, nor the British Bulldogs, nor the Von Erich brothers, and we can go on.
Another one I think is important to bring up this year, specifically for not getting in the Hall of Fame for the reasons other people did. And by the way, Morris Siegel, who I mentioned earlier, 195 votes, 48.1%, up from 31% last year. See, again, I think certain people of a certain era just need to be put in because it was an oversight. Not like on the ballot and every year it has to be another fucking effort to re-educate or educate for the first time anyone on basic wrestling history. But not getting in the Hall of Fame, first year on the ballot, 220 votes. Cody Rhodes.
And again, the most popular babyface and the world champion of the hottest promotion on the planet, who has a remarkable turnaround from being on AEW television and people going, because everybody was, to walking in there and having great matches, drawing record crowds, doing, whatever the fuck. But Cody Rhodes doesn't get voted into this, but SEMA.
Well, more importantly, and we'll talk about this one, I'm sure the Young Bucks got in. And what I'm saying is, if
that was a point that
if you get credit, if part of your Hall of Fame credential is credit for your role in being there with Tony when AEW was created, they can't get the credit if Cody doesn't.
Well, yes, because part of Dave's justification for the Young Bucks going into his Hall of Fame there, after he's been their press agent for all these years and tried to push for it, is that, well, the historical significance and the game-changing aspect of them and AEW, well, Cody did it too. And Cody was the business mind. Cody was the one that was trying to be a producer and trying to be an EVP and trying to fucking help these guys figure out how to do television.
He's the only one who grew from that. Again, where are the Young Bucks today in 2024? They've never meant less. They don't draw. People don't react to them. People are sick of them. They don't sell merch. Everything that made them great on the indies died completely on a national stage. And they're dead in the water. And people don't want to see them. And they keep having to be repackaged with the hopes that anything will work. And it doesn't work because they're morons. But again, if they're in the Hall of Fame, because the only real things they have going for them are they've won Dave's Awards a number of times from his voters.
Yeah, this unprecedented streak of Tag Team of the Year awards certainly qualifies them. What the fuck? It was the same people giving them the Tag Team of the Year awards.
They drew some nice crowds on the indies. Again, where people still don't want to accept the fact that Tony Khan was going to start this company one way or another without the Bucks. It was with or without the Bucks. He was going to start this company.
Yeah.
But we all want to pretend that the Bucks were a key part of it. Again, if they are, Cody is, more than Omega. If they are, Cody is. And what have they done since then? It's a disaster. Every time they're on the show, the ratings go down. It's a disaster. Meanwhile, Cody is one of the biggest drawing cards in the business today. So that's one of the issues
but
also with having active wrestlers on the ballot. And I'm against it in general. And I know no one ever really retires, but
that's the problem.
I think Young Bucks and Cody are all in the same category. They shouldn't be on the ballot while they're in their 30s. If you're in your 30s, unless you're like in a wheelchair, you shouldn't be on the ballot.
Well, and again, Dave was able to convince how many votes they had? 280 people that the Young Bucks have done all this. And because it's his fascination. And I'm hold on. I'm going to quote this. there is the argument on the other side that as far as being national stars, they'd be well behind people like Edge, Orton, and Goldberg, none of whom came close, and even Owens and Zayn. But one could argue their importance in making ROH a place you can go and make a living.
What?
And then AEW a place where guys can make the best money other than modern WWE in history is a difference maker. So
No, that's actually not right at all, Dave. Jesus. They don't get don't get credit for that. They made all of a sudden they changed ROH so that people were making a living. The houses went up, people got paid more. But again, we talked about before the categories. Amongst the reporters, whoever they may be, the Young Bucks came in. Where are they on this list?
Hold on, I'll give it to you.
Number two on the list.
Young Bucks second on the list among reporters, 14th among historians, 14th among active professionals, and with retired professionals, they didn't place.
So again, who is voting?
Their personal friends.
Right. See, that's the other issue. If you are a wrestling reporter, and that doesn't mean you're someone who knows much about history, and that's not to put anyone down, but there are all sorts of wrestling reporters. If you're a wrestling reporter and you're covering these people, if you're going to these events, if you're trying to get into the media scrum, if you're at the hotel trying to talk to these people, or at the conventions, you may not vote the right way. See, that's the problem. If you're a reporter, it doesn't mean you're knowledgeable. You may just be voting for the people you have access to. I think it needs to be disclosed who the reporters are, quite frankly. And the historians, too. I mean, the historians list isn't as offensive as the reporters list, but I think Dave needs to disclose how many people are voting, and other than active wrestlers, and we can discuss whether active wrestlers should be voting, who's voting? The Baseball Hall of Fame doesn't have the active baseball players voting. That'd be a disaster. You know how many nitwits there are in locker rooms?
And well, besides that, a couple guys can say, hey, I'll vote for you. Do you vote for me?
Yeah.
But let's tell the people who actually got in.
Yes.
Now that we've been doing 20 minutes on this, Roman Reigns was at the top and should be, for God's sake. And then in second place, Shingo Takagi. Now, Roman Reigns got 307 votes. Shingo came in second, but he only needed 185. And does he tell us who the fuck Shingo Takagi is?
I think we saw him on AEW, didn't we?
Oh, good Lord. Well, in that case, you know where their minds are at. And then number 3 with 291 votes, just under Roman Reigns, Paul Orndorff. Yes, Paul Orndorff is a fucking Hall of Fame wrestler under any circumstances. Not only for longevity, and would have been longer if he hadn't had the nerve injury, and drawing power and working ability. I saw him in 1977. Jarrett brought him to Tennessee because Eddie Graham and they had been training him, and they wanted him to get some experience. They showed the footage of him and Bob Backlund working out, doing that Hiro Matsuda fucking old time shit where they had their legs interlocked and they were doing back bridges and then sit-ups off of each other. Just these amazing calisthenics. He looked like a goddamn beast. He drew against Lawler in the main events for the Southern title after 3 weeks. Just on TV, beat a couple people and boom. And in the next 4 years, he worked in Mid-South against DiBiase and Roop. He was in the Carolinas, World Tag Team Champions with he and Snuka. Went back to Florida, worked for Eddie Graham. He worked main event and hung with the very best talent in the business right off the bat. And ended up being Hulk Hogan's most lucrative house show run. And
main event of WrestleMania 1.
Yeah, I mean, did everything. So yes, Paul Orndorff, and yes, Roman Reigns. In the middle is Shingo Takagi. And then also made it Johnny Rougeau, who honestly, he may be predate even some of our elderly audience, but he's a Hall of Fame guy because of the drawing power and the
It should have been in
the
already.
family, the dynasty that he established in Montreal. But the Young Bucks got more votes than Johnny Rougeau did. And then Los Hermanos Dinamita got in with 115 votes.
They should have been in a long time ago, too, quite frankly.
Well, but, you know...
That's Cien Caras. No, I mean, in terms of Lucha Libre, that's Cien Caras and his brothers. They were a big deal.
Well, yes, but maybe it needs to be a English-speaking Hall of Fame, a Spanish-speaking Hall of Fame, and a Japanese-speaking Hall of Fame.
Well, I think the issue is just being able to vote for anyone, and then it's classified into the regions. If that's the case, it should be just voters from that region, not just wrestlers who appeared in that region sometimes. Spiros Arion didn't get in. He got 97 votes. But that's, you know, less than a lot of other people under him.
Well, yeah, well, and let's finish up. SEMA got in Johnny Saint because he is a favorite because of his style and, you know, originating a lot of that type of thing. But was Johnny Saint ever a big draw in England?
Well, the big draw was Big Daddy, and he's not in.
Well,
he'll never be in.
Before Big Daddy. I'm talking about the big draws. Are we rewarding technicians now? In that case, is Tony Charles in the Hall of Fame if we're just rewarding technicians?
What is SEMA in for? Realistically, is SEMA
apparently running his fucking company in China out of business with $1.5 billion potential customers?
Well, before that, he's in there for his style. He's not in there for drawing. It's not like, oh, he was a major draw. I mean, that's the other thing about Takagi, too. Takagi debuted in like 2005. So he's a Hall of Famer and a main eventer in an era where Japanese wrestling fell off the map, had to like almost get rebooted, and now is in another hole. So, you know, someone being a Hall of Famer from Japan for the last 20 years is a whole lot different than someone who came up in the 70s, 80s, or even 90s.
When it was a major business.
Yeah, I mean, SEMA came up in the 90s, but at that point, they were, you know, the indies had flooded Japan or were about to, and a lot of them were doing this lucha style that Ultimo Dragon taught everyone. But again, SEMA, I mean, it's hard to justify a SEMA when you can't have a Bobby Bruns or a Junkyard Dog. It's hard to justify a Young Bucks when CM Punk and Cody Rhodes aren't in.
Or the Steiner brothers.
Or the Steiners, who were the greatest fucking tag team.
Let me, and by the way, one more person made it in, Bobby Davis, the manager, and obviously that is another oversight. The inspiration for Bobby Heenan and myself and every other Weasley manager. But okay, let's examine that the Young Bucks made it in, SEMA made it in, Shingo Takagi made it in, but as I mentioned, the Steiner brothers, way down on the list. The Steiner brothers aren't in, but the Young Bucks are. The British Bulldogs, the Von Erich brothers. Here, and to be honest with you, Mark and Jay Briscoe did not make it in. They're on the list. Everybody knows how much I liked Mark and Jay Briscoe as people and as talents. But they aren't Hall of Fame wrestlers. They're not a Hall of Fame tag team. If they had been able to go to the WWE and been anywhere near themselves, it would be a no-brainer, but they didn't get the opportunity. So we can't let sentiment cloud. Did they have the talent to be? Absolutely. Did they have the opportunity to be Hall of Famers? No. So we can't let sentiment cloud these things. But Adrian Street.
Doesn't matter. Hey, listen. If Ring of Honor success with the Young Bucks is a part of what someone needs for a Hall of Fame, then you got to think about that with the Briscoes.
Well, but what I'm saying is the opposite point, is that the Bucks don't deserve to be involved. Right. And
no, I'm saying it works both ways. I agree with you.
Well, yeah. And the Briscoes deserve to be involved a lot more than the Bucks because at least they were a better team for longer. But no, and I love Adrian Street. I can't say Hall of Fame wrestler with some of these other names.
He got one more vote than George Gordienko.
Yeah.
That's the same category.
Wild Bull Curry that you mentioned earlier. Seriously, fucking hell. Wild Bull Curry, one of the most famous pro wrestlers in the history of the sport. Longevity, he main evented from the late 30s to the mid 70s.
Late 70s. Late 70s.
Late 70s. Drawing power off the charts in various eras with and without television.
In various territories.
Various territories. Working ability, we've seen it. He had been a former boxer and a police officer. He looked like he was punching the fuck out of people. And one of the great, Dave said this one time, about Gorilla Monsoon, one of the all-time classic ring names, where you're telling me that Wild Bull Curry isn't the same thing. He fits all the, and he got 30% of the vote. Roy Welch that you mentioned is a Southern Toots Mont. He's one of 5 people really in the 40s that pretty much established booking offices that kept the business fucking going. Cowboy Bob Ellis did not make it. One of the biggest baby faces in Jim Barnett's big Midwest territory that we talk about, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, worked all over the country, drew money, main evented everywhere. He was so over in Indiana from drawing 10, 12,000 people in the late 50s, he was still Bruiser's world champion in 1974. He was still drawing 10,000 fucking people. Iron Sheik didn't make it. John Moxley was on the ballot. Thank God he only got 26% of the vote, so there is some justice. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin Sullivan is not a Hall of Fame wrestler after a 40-year career and booker and wrestler and blah, blah, blah.
And again, Dave recently added tag teams. So you look at the tag teams here. I'm not a believer in Tully and Arn being in the Hall of Fame only because of the longevity. It was a
year and a half.
2 years at the most. The Hardys, Steamboat and Youngblood, Hart Foundation,
Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart, Steamboat and Youngblood, Hardy Boys,
Gordman and Goliath,
Mad Dog and Butcher Vachon.
It's every famous tag team ever isn't in the Hall of Fame.
Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch.
Inoki and Sakaguchi, so it's not even just limited to American tag teams like the Steiners being ignored. It's all over the world.
And the Young Bucks are in this. And you know what? I said it earlier. I don't want to be a part of a fucking club that would have me for a member. If these people consider the Young Bucks more significant
how much
than all those tag teams.
I'll bet you Dave renames his Tag Team of the Year award and the Year-End Awards after the Young Bucks. I'll bet you he does. He did it for Bryan Danielson. He did it for Lou Thesz. He did it for Ric Flair.
He can make it the Young Bucks Schlong Schlurper Award. Here's other singles. SEMA. SEMA is in the Hall of Fame, but here's who's not. The Mongolian Stomper. Pampiro Firpo. Bullet Bob Armstrong. Killer Carl Cox. Bill Goldberg that we mentioned before. I mean, it's sad is what it is.
The idea that Goldberg's not in a Hall of Fame and the Young Bucks are, considering national fame, business. I mean, Goldberg did more business in 2 years than the Young Bucks did in their entire career put together. They've been paid more because they found a sucker, but Goldberg did more business.
That's the whole thing behind this is what people forget is that there has never been a case in the 125-year history of organized professional wrestling anywhere in the world, much less this country, where some guy would just say, I'm going to spend several $100 million to book my own wrestling company, and boy, howdy, maybe I'll make a profit sometime, but I don't really care. It's never happened before. It's not going to happen again. And I mean, I'm sorry, but anybody that thinks that just because the 2 members of the Lollipop Guild from Rancho Cucamonga might not have been available, that he wasn't going to fucking do this. He was going to do this. I talked to him, and I can vouch for the fact that he was goddamn intent on doing this. But anyway, I mean, it's gotten ridiculous where.
But this is why I don't vote anymore, because then you feel like your vote means nothing because you realize it's you up against a wall. It's you up against an entire voting body.
And boy, that sounds familiar. It's us up against a wall of a bunch of fucking lunatics that are voting.
When Tony Schiavone gets 126 votes, who is using a position on their ballot? You're allowed to vote for what, 10 people?
Tony Schiavone got one more vote than Wild Bull Curry did.
And he got 5 more votes than Roy Welch.
But I just saw this. He only got 7 less votes than Randy Orton. SEMA is in the Hall of Fame. Randy Orton is not in the Hall of Fame.
You know, but on the other hand, I'm not even saying this is a joke.
Wait a minute, Randy Orton, longevity? He's been there for 23 fucking years, right?
Right.
Drawing power. I don't know what else to say there. Incredible worker. Probably the best consistent worker they've had for 20 years. What did Heyman say one time? They said, who's the 5 wrestlers you'd sign to start a new promotion? Randy Orton, Randy Orton, Randy Orton, Randy Orton, and Randy Orton. And so what am I meant? Longevity, great worker, drawing power.
I think for a lot of people from that era, even though he currently goes into this era of WWE, they may not get the credit they deserve, and it's hard to figure out who gets what credit for a lot of the big houses when it was brand-based as opposed to wrestler-based. And Cena's a clear-cut guy. Orton, Batista, like there are certain guys that you have to sit and think about, you know, what was them and what wasn't, I think. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of. I mean, again, he's very low on this list. He's low.
Because he doesn't do backflips and he makes fun of the people who do, and this base here that Dave has cultivated over time.
What I was going to say before, though, is, all kidding aside, if there's a Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame, the Young Bucks belong in a Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. If it's a Hall of Fame for people that have been championed in the Observer, raved about in the Observer, given star ratings that even people who are friends with them at times admit are just, it's Dave masturbating all over himself because he loves them. If there was ever going to be a Dave Meltzer Hall of Fame, their first ballot, I'm surprised it took him this long, quite frankly. Because Dave, it's been a self-fulfilling prophecy with the Young Bucks. Dave anointed them, he chose them, went to war with people who didn't accept it. Remember, it got to the point where Dave was defending Joey Ryan's act, only because he was friends with them.
Yes.
So I think they belong in a Dave Meltzer Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame, but it's hard for me, you know, I like to think I know my shit, and it's hard for me to look at a lot of these names and not go, it's not even a question. Like, Dave should have put them in the first class. To me, that's the standard. If they should have been there in the first body, in whatever it was, 97, 98, I forget when, 96, forget when he started it. You know, Morris Siegel, Roy Welch, how are they going to get voted in? How the fuck is that going to happen? How's Wild Bull Curry ever going to get voted in? It isn't going to happen.
That's like Abner Doubleday not being in the Baseball Hall of Fame if Roy Welch and Morris Siegel are not in it.
By the way, added to next year's ballot, Masaki Mochizuki.
What?
Bill Dundee.
Wait, what? Hold on.
I don't know anything about
Masaki Mochizuki.
I am not familiar with Mr. or Mrs. I'm actually not even sure. I don't know anything about Mochizuki. That's my point. Bill Dundee, added to the ballot. Gorilla Monsoon, added to the ballot.
Wait, he's not again. How would Gorilla Monsoon not be in a goddamn Wrestling Hall of Fame?
I'll tell you why, and I think people will probably reevaluate him or evaluate him for the first time a little differently next year when Brian Solomon's book comes out. But I think a lot of people don't think of him as being a force behind the scenes for Vince McMahon Sr. and important for Vince Jr. but they just think of him as the commentator who, again, go back to the Observer. I was a kid in the 80s and the 90s. I liked Gorilla Monsoon as a commentator. It didn't bother me. But it bothered Dave a whole lot. And it bothered a lot of the readers of the Observer a whole lot because he was, he was Gorilla Monsoon. It was a different kind of thing. But he'll be added next year.
But as far as his drawing power as a wrestler for that incredible run and being the, a partner in the Northeast Territory for so long and making so much fucking money, he was the highest paid pro wrestler probably in the world at one point.
Yeah. He may have been one of the highest paid guys in the WWF National Expansion because of the deal he had where he was getting paid on every single show that happened every single day of the week.
Yeah.
And also think about the position he was put in. Buddy Rogers just declared that he was too sick to work or he left or whatever it was, and they needed an opponent for the new champion Bruno. And they created Gorilla Monsoon with Wild Red Berry. And it worked. And it is you brought it up before, one of those legendary names. My dad did not like wrestling. He knew who Gorilla Monsoon was. But he's not in. Next year added to the ballot, Jesse Ventura. Io Shirai. Gilbert LeDuc.
Who is Gilbert LeDuc?
I don't know, so I can't mock it one way or the other.
Are you fucking kidding me? What is he? Was he the illegitimate fucking cousin of Joe and Paul?
Well, there's a lot of work still being done by historians to uncover a lot of the history of European wrestling and stuff. Maybe it's part of that. Drew McIntyre added to the ballot next year. Steve Gray will be on the ballot, as well as Ted Boy Marino, Les Kellett, and Los Infernales, as well as FTR and Mercedes Moné.
Oh my God.
Oh, and dropped from the ballot because they got less than 10% of all votes from a region. Asuka, Kevin Owens, the Usos, Sid Vicious, Bray Wyatt, Sami Zayn, Kento Miyahara, and Psycho Clown. So they will no longer be on the ballot.
And I mean, what did poor Sami Zayn do to these people? Because, I mean, you can't even argue that he's not really a Hall of Fame guy because we're holding to a higher standard. So I'm not putting Mark and Jay Briscoe in. I'm not putting Sami Zayn in. But less than 10%? It seems like he'd be the Buckaroos fans kind of guy.
The other thing, too, is, again, we're talking about the middle of these wrestlers' careers. Again, the Young Bucks right now are dead on arrival. People don't want to see them. I don't even know if they want to see themselves, because they know it's true. But they're in. The Bloodline stuff is playing out as we speak, and it's the biggest thing in professional wrestling for a long time now. It's not just Roman. Again, I'm not a fan of the Usos in the ring. But the Usos then got kicked off the ballot too, along with Sami Zayn. Everyone not named Roman got in, and the Usos and Sami Zayn got kicked off the ballot. Think about that. But as this is playing out, that's my point. Evaluating the Usos right now, I would say no. But who knows where we're going to be in 10 years? If they do more big business with this thing, and you look back and you realize that Jey Uso and Sammy at times, but really Jay and Jimmy were major players in everything with Roman, you may evaluate it a bit differently.
I think a lot of these people are evaluating things differently.
Bob Caudle got less votes than Tony Schiavone. Bob Caudle got 69 votes. Schiavone got 126. That's the problem. People like the idea of Schiavone more than actually his awful commentary. But the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame 2024 class, congratulations to all the new inductees.
Let's give them a big hand. Yeah. Ha!
Jeez. But there's a reason why people like me and, others aren't voting anymore. But that was the Observer Hall of Fame, and this is your show.